If you've been around the endgame PvP community for any amount of time, you'll know about the Destiny Data Compendium. This is essentially a compilation of all the information that we know about the game at any given time. Stuff that isn't explained by Bungie, exactly how much of a damage buff kill clip is, for example. But recently, I was wondering why my targeting mods felt different. And what I found was that sometime after Heresy, they received an update. I don't know if they've always been like this, but I learned that targeting mods are only active after weapons are held out for 1 full second. This is also true for loader mods, but less important. Now, what this means is your targeting mods should only be used on your primary because you're never going to be holding your shotgun out for a full second before you shoot it. For fusion rifles, this is debatably worth using. We'll get into that in a second. Another thing I learned is that targeting mods are better than we thought. So before we thought it was just aim assist and an ADS scaler, right? Both of those things are true. It does grant both of those things, but each targeting mod that you have also grants an accuracy bonus. So what this means is when you have a targeting mod on, you are 10% more accurate than when you don't have a targeting mod on. This is not exactly how aiming works. Aiming in D2 is unbelievably complex and stupid, but just think of it as you're going to land way more shots if you have a targeting mod on. What this also means is for things like fusions, SMGs, auto rifles, pulse rifles, anything that has a small degree of bloom that you usually would not be able to have any control over, you can put 3 targeting mods on and you will be 20% more accurate than someone who does not have 3 targeting mods on. So, targeting mods are very, very good. And so that got me thinking, I wonder if there's anything else that might be very good that people aren't really considering because mods have been basically the same for so long. And so that is why I came up with this video. Basically just, here are all the mods you should be using for PvP, here's why you should be using them, and so let's get into it. I already talked about targeting mods, debatably 2 targeting mods, and an orb gen mod or a dynamo mod or whatever for the helmet. AE does literally nothing on controller. I was testing this out the other day. Because of the intrinsic issues with controller and in-air gunfights, and the fact that it messes with your reticle friction, it's just not worth it. So don't bother with in-air compensator if you're a controller player on console. I don't know if it works the same way on PC. I don't play on PC. Now, moving on. Let's talk specifically about orb mods. Orb mods only proc if you get 2 kills within 3 seconds of each other. This did not used to be the case. This used to be significantly more powerful than it is right now. I believe it used to be something like 10 seconds. That may have been back when masterworked weapons were making the orbs, not specifically the orb mods. All I know is unless you're playing a mode where you are absolutely fragging out, then orb mods are not worth it. So just go dynamo if you want the 3rd mod. Otherwise, just go triple targeting for your primary and just ignore everything else. Moving on to arms. Dex mods are still a 0.8 animation duration multiplier, but, and we've known this for a while, but this does, it's nice to have it solidified. Stow animations cannot exceed their weapon's base speed at 100 handling. What this means is if you have a shotgun that has 100 handling and you try to stow it or put it away, it will only stow at that speed. If you put a dex mod on, it will not stow any faster. So what this means is basically dex mods, scalers like closing time, threat detector, that's only for draw speed. So if you think about how this factors into an engagement, let's say you shoot twice with your hand cannon and then you pull your shotgun, right? That pull of your shotgun is what you're speccing into when you're using closing time, when you're using dex mods. When you shoot your shotgun round and whiff it into the wall and then put it away, that stow animation is not being specced into. That's already probably capped at 100 handling, and it's gonna be about 1/3 of a second, and it's not gonna be that fast, but whatever. If you live long enough to whiff your shotgun shot, put it away, and pull out your primary again, the guy is probably shit anyway. So just something to note about dexterity mods. Reload mods. As I previously mentioned, you're gonna need to wait a second if you want the scaler. Still worth using in my opinion, because the only other thing in that slot is heavy-handed. That being said, heavy-handed is a very solid mod. That's the only other mod in the Gauntlet slot that I would suggest even considering using in PvP, and that is because an orb off of a melee kill is very powerful. You can get orbs off of stuff like weighted throwing knives, stuff like Void Warlock melee. That thing does a ton of damage for some reason. Orbs off of shit like knockout melee on Titan, orbs off Celestial Fire. Very powerful mod. I don't think firepower is worth it. Orb off of a grenade kill, like you're very rarely getting a grenade kill. That's usually for zoning your enemy. But melees, that's a frequent finisher. It happens enough that I think that is the actual other consideration in that slot. Moving on. Unflinching mods. That's literally the only thing you're ever going to be running on your chest piece. That's the only thing that activates in PvP. That's the only thing that matters in PvP. But we did not know this before. We know this now. Unflinching mods are only active while you are ADS'd. So if you're using Last Word, if you're using BXR hip firing, if you're using DMT, unflinching mods do not matter to you while you are hip firing. They also scale like shit. So one mod is 25% flinch resistance. 2 mods is 30% flinch resistance. 3 mods is 35% flinch resistance. So unless you want an extra 5% flinch resistance for 3 energy slots on your chest piece, you really should only be running 1 unflinching mod for each weapon. And yes, I do run an unflinching mod for my shotgun. It's not super important, because if you're gonna get flinched off a shoddy shot, like, it's gonna happen, and if you're not gonna get flinched off it, you're not gonna get flinched off it. But I like to run it because I don't have anything else to put on my chest piece, and 5% primary flinch is not worth it to me. Moving on to boots. Unless you're running some niche fragging build that uses surges, the only mods you should ever use on your boots are recuperation, better already, and a holster mod so you don't get caught with an unloaded one-shot jousting machine. Basically, boots have been solved for a very long time. I don't think anything has changed about the mods. The reason I run recuperation and better already is recuperation will give me health if I'm actively in a gunfight taking damage, and better already will heal me if I grab an orb and then turn on somebody and then get into a gunfight. 2 cases, 2 mods. There's nothing else really to put on your boots, so it doesn't really, like, there's no opportunity cost, right? You put the recuperation on, you put the better already in the bag, and then every time you pick up an orb, you're full health, or you get a chunk of health, whatever. The holster mod makes it so you don't have to sit through that long-ass shotgun reload animation, or that long-ass sniper reload animation, or that long-ass fusion reload animation. You can be in a primary gunfight, you can take the guy down with your primary, you slide over the brick, you run over the brick, whatever, keep the primary pressure up, you pull out your special weapon, and it has the bullet loaded. And that's why holster mods are so powerful. If you're a sniper, then you have pressure on the lane instantly. You don't have to duck out of the lane and then peek back in. If you're a fusion rifle main, that's just a free kill, as every fusion rifle main knows. Every time you get a bullet in your fusion, that's a free kill. So if you can do that without reloading, very powerful. If you're a shotgun player, this is what actually keeps you alive. And as a hand cannon shotgun main myself, I know what I'm talking about here. If you have to reload your shotgun, you will die, because the amount of aggression you can put on people is directly determined by whether you have a shot in your shotgun or not. So, run the fucking holster mod. Moving on. Class items are, fittingly enough, where mods get class specific. For fast charging class abilities, I find it's better to go with Powerful Attraction and Reaper for the instant heal on kill tech. Then I slot a Bomber or Outreach because that's all I've got room for. Usually, I'm running a 4-slot stat mod on my class item just because that's where I've got room for it. But that being said, there are considerable arguments for distribution, as it does grant 1% super energy on every class ability if you use it when you're close to enemies. Very good mod, but it is a 3 cost, so you're going to have to think about it. There is actually opportunity cost on your class item. Obviously, if you're running surges, then throw on time dilation and powerful attraction, and then I guess you're running Reaper as well, but like surge builds are so niche, you're getting 3 to 5% damage out of it. Whatever. For Warlocks or Barricade Titans, I think distribution is much more fitting, because generally you're in a gunfight when you're throwing those 2 abilities, and like, you have the mod slot space. Like, you're not usually running Reaper on Warlock with a Rift because you're already healing. You're not usually running Reaper on Titan with a Barricade because you're not like throwing the Barricade down and then immediately getting a kill. It's usually a defensive ability. That being said, there are actually considerations here. Distribution is good. The other mods I mentioned are good. Just pick your favorite combination of them, really. Now, on to stats. Use 10 recovery. If you are physically incapable of getting 10 recovery, use at least 7. Otherwise, do not play PvP until you have made a build with 10 recovery. How recovery works specifically is complicated, but the biggest possible advantage you can have is having your health come back faster than your opponent's. Recovery is the most important thing you can put on any PvP build. Fuck your stats, fuck your intellect, screw everything, even your mods. If you can get 10 recovery, get it. Arguably even more important than the exotic you choose. Resilience is class specific. On Hunter, because the class is so stat hungry, I usually only hit 3 because I literally do not have the stats to care about surviving cheesy 2 bursts. On Titan, I use 8 because I actually like mobility on Titan, but most people will use 10, and 10 will survive a Sword Logic PR frame, so do with that information what you will. 10 resilience on Titan is arguably good enough that you can run 7 recovery in exchange for 10 resilience, and then you still have enough mobility to strafe without looking like a turtle, but it's very much a feel thing on Titan. On Titan, I usually prefer to still have 10 recovery because I play my Titan like a hunter because I'm a hunter main at heart. Warlock itself is interesting because mobility is highly preference on that class. 2 mobility will give you faster skates, like 7 mobility will give you way better strafe speeds and more options for blink play. Like, Warlock is unique in that regard. But if you are a 2 mobility Warlock, you can spec up to 7 resilience, and you can cut into some decently useful gates there. Otherwise, as I have done, fuck all that, go 10 recovery, screw the rest of your stats, maybe put some into mobility if you want it, and then you can spec insanely annoying amounts of stats into ability recharge. Like, we're talking double 100 discipline strength, and you can be just some kind of freak. Now, discussing those other stats in more detail, intellect pretty much doesn't matter in 6s, like, at all. If you're playing high stakes 3s, though, go for 7 to 9. 10 isn't really worth it, and anything lower will probably result in a late super or maybe not even getting it at all. But again, it's dependent on what your build is. If you're running well, 9 intellect is going to be really good for you because you get your super faster. If you're running like Behemoth, like 5 intellect, and the only time you're actually going to get that super is if you get every single kill that match. So just be cognizant of what you're trying to do with your build. Moving on to the other 2 stats, they're basically the same stat. It's just, do you want your grenade on right bumper faster, or do you want your grenade on left bumper faster? Obviously on Hunter, strength doesn't matter because you have Gambler's Dodge. Otherwise, know that tiers 1 through 7 will all provide about a 10% ability regeneration boost per tier, but tier 8 is an additional 0.15, tier 9 is 0.20, and tier 10 is 0.25. To best exploit this, I'd suggest picking the ability you think is best and getting it to tier 10 or however high you can, and using the other one as a dump stat. Hunters are so annoying because melee is their dump stat, duh, but they get the melee anyway because you use your Gambler's Dodge. And so you can have 10 discipline and effectively 10 strength while having 2 of the stat. I think that's all I wanted to say. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's it. Weapon mods, I guess. Run anti-flinch, duh, like anti-flinch is insane. Icarus doesn't do anything. I already talked about how AE does literally nothing on controller. If your hand cannon doesn't hit 65 stability, use ballistics. Range is less important, I think, on hand cannons than people think. Use a backup mag on your shotgun to make closing time proc. Talked about that in the Deadlock video. That's all I've got. That was a lot of yapping. Sub. I'm out. Yeah, I don't know. Praise God or something.